Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini. Auctorem Fidei, encyclical, papal bull rather. It's a bull, it's not an encyclical. A papal bull is addressing kind of an emergency situation by the Pope. What year?
1784.
Day?
August 28th.
1794, so it's right after the French Revolution. And this is a powerful encyclical. Archbishop Lefebvre quotes it very often, refers to it very often. So we're going to take a dive into this short papal bull. The papal bull Auctorem Fidei was a forceful condemnation of the errors of the robber synod, the robber council of Pistoia, which had taken place in what year?
1786.
Where?
In Pistoia, Tuscany.
What country?
Italy.
Like the modernist Second Vatican Council from 1962 to 65 of the Novus Ordo Church, the Synod of Pistoia introduced novelties under a veil of ambiguity, which means
they were double-tongued.
Double-tongued, yes. Thus injecting the poison of error all the more cunningly into unwary souls. Pope Pius VI, who lived from
1775 to 1799
as Pope, fired back with this apostolic constitution. We are presenting the introductory text of this document, which precedes the history of the actual errors. For this text has never been completely translated into English before and contains anti-modernist dynamite. So I think I got this off the Novus Ordo Watch website and just had it printed. Highlights. Point 1. There is a dreadful, never-ending conspiracy against the very body of Christ, says the Pope. So he's admitting there's a conspiracy to destroy the church. That's no big news. Next, the former bishop of Pistoia, quote, embarked on confusing, destroying, and utterly overturning sound Christian doctrine by introducing troublesome novelties under the guise of a sham reform. So Pistoia, the Council of Pistoia, which was condemned, is like an appetizer of Vatican II. Next point, quote, he says, in order not to shock the ears of Catholics, the innovators sought to hide the subtleties of their tortuous maneuvers by the use of seemingly innocuous words. Innocuous means?
Harmless.
Yeah, so their words seem harmless, but they're actually deadly. So the innovators sought to hide the subtleties, so that is the subtle hidden phrases and hidden errors in the phrases of their tortuous maneuvers by the use of seemingly innocuous words such as would allow them to insinuate error into souls in the most gentle manner. Once the truth had been compromised, they could, by means of slight changes or additions in phraseology, distort the confession of the faith that is necessary for our salvation, and lead the faithful by subtle errors to their eternal damnation. Yes, so errors in doctrine can damn souls. Next point, this, quote, cannot be excused in the way that one sees it being done, under the erroneous pretext that the seemingly shocking affirmations in one place are further developed along orthodox or traditional lines in other places, and even in yet other places corrected, as if allowing for the possibility of either affirming or denying the statement, or of leaving it up to the personal inclinations of the individual, such has always been the fraudulent and daring method used by innovators to establish error. It allows for both the possibility of promoting error and of excusing it. So you see, the Pope has them pegged down, these little weasels. They're squirming and squirming. Next point, Michael.
The heretic, Nestorius, quote, expressed himself in a
plethora
of words, mixing true things with others that were obscure, mixing at times one with the other in such a way that he was also able to confess those things which were denied, while at the same time possessing a basis for denying very sentences which he confessed, unquote.
Yeah, so in one sentence he says truth, next sentence he contradicts it. In one sentence he says a double phrase, the next sentence he favors truth, next paragraph professes error. So what have you got? What have you got?
Ambiguity, double-tongued speech.
Ambiguity.
Contradiction.
What's another word for this bowl of confusion? Gobbledygook. That's an actual word, you know. Gobbledygook. That's what it is. Next, Anthony.
Whenever it becomes necessary to expose statements that disguise some suspected error of danger under the veil of ambiguity, one must denounce the perverse meaning under which the error opposed to Catholic truth is camouflaged.
Yeah, isn't that important, right? If someone says things that doesn't sound right, such as we worship the same God as the Muslims, that has to be called out and condemned. And that's in the Vatican II documents. That goes for any priest or bishop too, when they formally teach. 95% of Vatican II is Catholic and acceptable. No, that's not true. Because it's all wrapped up in these kind of phrases, ambiguity, double meaning, contradiction, right? You cannot support that. Or when another bishop says, the new Mass can nourish your faith. No, that's false. That's not true. The new Mass is deadly to the faith. It erodes it. Right? So reread this because it's very important.
Whenever it becomes necessary to expose statements that disguise some suspected error of danger under the veil of ambiguity, one must denounce the perverse meaning under which the error opposed to Catholic truth is camouflaged.
So what's he saying in a nutshell, Anthony?
He's saying that the ambiguous statements have to be condemned and called out.
Yes. Who's saying this?
Pope Pius VI.
Pope Pius VI, yeah. Very, very serious. Very important. And remember, Pope Honorius III, he was not condemned for teaching heresy. But he was condemned for what?
For not condemning heresy.
For not condemning heresy. Not jumping on their ambiguous phrases and pulling out the snakes. Next point, Gabriel.
It is not a matter of the danger of only one or another diocese. Any novelty at all assails the universal church.
Repeat. Any novelty
at all assails the universal church.
Everyone, repeat.
Any novelty at all assails the universal church.
Repeat.
Any novelty at all assails the universal church.
Repeat.
Any novelty at all assails the universal church.
So the Pope could have just said, well, this only affects the diocese. It's not a big deal. We can let it go. Well, no. Any bishop preaching a novelty affects the whole church because he represents the whole church. Right? So any of these ecumenical bishops promoting ecumenism and praying with Jews, Muslims, and Pachamama and all that is a scandal to the whole church. It attacks the whole church. Hence, Archbishop Lefebvre said, I do not want to come before Christ and hear from him, you have destroyed the church with the rest of them. Next point, God forbid, says Pope Pius VI, God forbid that the voice of Peter ever be silent in that sea, where living and presiding perpetually he presents the truth of faith to those in search of it. So God forbid that the Pope be silent, in other words. It is as though the bull Auctorem Fidei were speaking directly about the modernness of the Vatican II Church. Here's another quote from Pope Pius XII, Allocution, Pastoral Conference, Friday, May 23rd, 1958. This is the day he died, or the year he died. He said, "The roots of modern apostasy lay in scientific atheism, dialectic materialism, rationalism, Illuminism, and Freemasonry, which is the mother of them all." Repeat that, everyone.
The roots of modern apostasy lay in scientific atheism, dialectic materialism, rationalism, Illuminism, and Freemasonry, which is the mother of them all.
Yeah, pretty powerful quote, isn't it? Editorial note, read it, Anthony.
The Synod of Pistoia was a local council held in 1786 in Pistoia, Italy, which was somewhat similar in content to the modernist Second Vatican Council 1962-1965 of the Novus Ordo Church, especially in terms of introducing novelties and using ambiguous language. In 1794, Pope Pius VI condemned 85 propositions taught by the Synod and solemnly forbade Catholics from believing, teaching, or preaching them. While the text of the 85 propositions and the censures Pope Pius VI attached to each have long been published in English, the introductory part of the bull has never before been published in English in its entirety, yet it is precisely this introduction which delivers a most powerful blow against Vatican II. Novus Ordo Watch is honored to be able to make this text available in its entirety for the first time in English.
Okay, here we go. The bull of Pope Pius VI, Auctorem Fidei, Pius, Bishop, servant of the servants of God, greetings and my apostolic blessing to all the Christian faithful. The Apostle Paul commands us, who look on Jesus as the author and finisher of the faith, to consider diligently the nature and magnitude of the opposition against him, which he endured for sinners, so that at some time or other we, wearied by labors and dangers, do not lose heart and fall almost lifeless. It is of utmost necessity that we strengthen and refresh ourselves with this most wholesome thought when the raging heat of the dreadful and never-ending conspiracy against the very body of Christ, which is the Church, takes fire, so that strengthened in the Lord and in the might of his power, we, protected by the shield of faith, may be able to resist in the evil day and quench all the fiery darts of the most wicked one. Ephesians 6. Read on, Michael.
Truly, in these tumultuous times, in this revolutionary upheaval, all good men must join the burdensome struggle against any and all enemies of the Christian name. The guardianship and guidance of the entire flock entrusted to our pastoral care are a more serious matter for us, upon who greater zeal for the Christian religion is incumbent than upon all others.
Okay, he's quoting Pope St. Siricius to Himerius of Tarragona, Epistle 1. Okay, go on.
But despite the heavy responsibility set upon our shoulders to bear the burden of all who are heavily laden, the more aware we are of our own frailty, the more we harbor a more robust hope. The divinely established ruling principle in the person of Blessed Peter lightens the apostolic duty, so that he, who never intended to abandon government of the Church, once it has been given by Christ, might not cease to carry on his shoulders the burdens of the apostolic governance of those whom God had given to him as heirs, to protect and safeguard with a perpetual succession.
Anthony?
And indeed, in these hardships that surround us on every side, a heap of other troubles have mounted up, as it were, so that we should have been for us a source of joy is the source of a greater sadness. For in fact, when a leader of God's holy church, under the name of priest, turns the very people of Christ away from the path of truth toward the peril of an erroneous belief, and when this occurs in a major city, then clearly the distress is multiplied and a greater anxiety is in order.
Yeah, so he's quoting Pope St. Celestine I, Epistle 12. And he's talking about what bishop? What Pius VI, what bishop is he talking about?
He's speaking about this stories.
No.
Not here in the front.
No. What's the whole point of this bull?
He's condemning the Robert Counts of Pistoia.
Yeah, headed by... Who headed the synod, the council? Was it a deacon, a priest, a lector, exorcist, acolyte?
No, the bishop.
It was a bishop. So he's addressing this bishop. He's saying this bishop's misleading, teaching error. He's in a major city and it's affecting the whole church. You follow?
Yes. Scipione de Ricci. That's his name.
All right, read on, Gabriel.
To be sure, this has not occurred in far-off lands, but in the full blaze of Italy, under the eyes of the city, that is, Rome, and near the threshold of the apostles, that is, the tombs of Saints Peter and Paul. There has been a bishop, distinguished by the honor of 2 C's, Scipione de Ricci, formerly the bishop of Pistoia and Prato.
Okay, so that's the bishop. There's the culprit. Scipione de Ricci. Bishop Scipione de Ricci. There's the culprit. There he is by name. See that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so the Pope is calling out this bishop and he's calling out his name. Isn't that not being nice? Isn't that mean to call names?
It's very disrespectful.
Isn't it?
No.
Why isn't it mean? Isn't the Pope a meanie
No.
for picking on one of his bishops who means well and who's nice?
No, he has to call out the wolves. He has to name them by name.
Yeah, but Scipione might be nice. Maybe he smiles a lot.
But it's charitable to call someone out of their errors.
Yes. And a lot of modern people have a problem with that. They couldn't stomach Archbishop Lefebvre naming Cardinal Ratzinger, naming Pope John Paul II. Stop being mean. And with us, stop being mean. You can't mention Bishop Williamson when he's promoting his errors. Pray for his soul. You can't name Bishop Fidei when he's compromising on the faith and compromising the position of Archbishop Lefebvre. You can't be a meanie. Well, we're not being mean to them, but it's a duty of justice for the church, and it's a duty of charity to call out the wolf, right? And that goes for any of us. If any of us, priests, bishops, cardinals, popes, teach error and persist in it, I mean, there's one thing to make mistakes, which we're allowed once in a while, mistakes, but those are not errors because we want to correct the mistakes. But one who persists, like Bishop Williamson always did, persisted in teaching. New Mass gives grace. New Mass nourishes your faith. The new Mass is bad, it's evil, but if there's nothing else to go to, you can go to it. No way. That's not true. And many priests got on me of the fake resistance, told me, you're being mean. You're causing trouble. You're attacking Bishop Williamson. Well, I would say I'm not attacking him. I have the greatest respect for him and filial affection for him. But he's teaching error, and it's misleading souls. It's dangerous, and it's confusing. And then promoting the new Mass miracles, for goodness sake. Right? So the name of this bishop, Scipione de Ricci, formerly the Bishop of Pistoia and Prato. Go on.
Whom we embraced with paternal love as he approached us to take up his pastoral duty. In the very text of the rite of his sacred ordination, he, in turn, bound himself by means of a scrupulous, solemn oath to the fidelity and obedience due to us and to this apostolic see. And yet, this same man, in the short space of time after he had left our embrace with the kiss of peace, surrounded by the deceits of a pack of teachers of a perverse school of thought, went to the people entrusted to him. He began to apply himself, but not in the measure he should have, that is to say, by defending, nurturing, and perfecting the praiseworthy and peaceful form of Christian teaching that his predecessor bishops had already introduced long ago and almost secured. Instead, he embarked on confusing, destroying, and utterly overturning it by introducing troublesome novelties under the guise of a sham reform.
Okay, troublesome novelties. Okay, novelties is anything new. Any custom, practice, words, phrasing, that's new. That's new. So, obvious novelties of our time: giving communion in the hand, drink of the chalice, changing the mass. These are all novelties, right? Under the guise of a sham reform. We're going to reform the church. Aggiornamento, right? Vatican II. And furthermore, go on.
And furthermore, when at our urging, he had decided upon a diocesan synod, it happened that, by his inflexible pertinacity in his own way of thinking, a more severe occasion of ruin grew out of the source from which we should have looked for some kind of remedy for the wounds.
Okay, what's inflexible pertinacity? What's another loose American phrase for that?
Unmovable, inflexible, unmovable.
Yeah, hard-headed, right? Stubbornness. Yes. Truly, after the Synod of Pistoia in 1786, emerged from the hiding places in which it lurked, concealed for some time, there was no one with pious scruples, and with any good sense, who did not at once warn that the plan of the authors had been to unite into one whole, like a body, the seeds of the vicious teachings they had scattered beforehand through numerous pamphlets, to revive errors not long since condemned, and to detract from the faith and authority of those apostolic decrees by which they stood condemned. Read on, Michael.
When we clearly perceived that the more serious problems are in themselves, the more considerably they demand the support of our pastoral care, we did not delay to focus our attention on taking those counsels that seemed more apropos, either in healing or suppressing the emergent evil. And so, first of all, being mindful of the sage advice of our predecessor, Saint Zosimus.
Okay, what's sage advice? What's a sage?
Wise.
Yeah, wise advice of our Saint Zosimus, to wit,
those things that are of great importance call for a weighty examination. We tasked 4 bishops and their personal theologians from the secular clergy to examine the synod that this bishop produced. Next, we assigned a committee of several cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church and other bishops to study diligently the complete collection of the synod's acts, to compare the widely scattered passages with each other, and to discuss the identified formal opinions. We personally received their decisions, both orally and in writing. They decided that the synod must be universally condemned, and that very many of the propositions taken from the synod must be reproved with more or less serious censures, some indeed in and of themselves, and others in connection with the formally expressed opinions. After hearing and considering their observations, we also took care that certain leading statements of wrongful teachings taken from the whole synod, ones to which the condemnable opinions spread by the synod directly or indirectly referred, were reduced to a certain order for the future, and that each one of these be subject to its own special censure.
Anthony?
However, in case obstinate men seize an opportunity for detraction on account of this, notwithstanding either the very carefully conducted comparison of passages or the investigation of the formal opinions, we have determined, in order to meet this probable calumny, to make use of the wise counsel, duly and cautiously applied, which several of our most holy predecessors, along with highly esteemed bishops, and even general councils have left attested and recommended, with notable examples, when they had cause to restrain the rise of dangerous or harmful novelties of this sort. They knew the capacity of innovators in the art of deception. In order not to shock the ears of Catholics, the innovators sought to hide the subtleties of their torturous maneuvers by the use of seemingly innocuous words, such as would allow them to insinuate error into souls in the most gentle manner.
Okay, so using these double phrases that might sound okay, such as, we accept and acknowledge the validity of the sacraments of the reform of Pope Paul VI and John Paul II, and that the new Mass and these sacraments are legitimately promulgated. Sounds kind of harmless. But in those words of the doctrinal declaration, yes, signed and approved and sent by Bishop Fidei to Rome, he also published it in the March 2013 Cor Unum, which is a priestly bulletin. He printed the doctrinal declaration. It's there. And he says in there, we sent this to Rome because we approve it. But it's a perfect example of these deadly words. They sound harmless, but once you uncover them, they're deadly. Here he was quoting Pope St. Leo the Great, Epistle 129. And then Vatican II, of course, is loaded with such phrases. Deadly words: ecumenism, democracy. What's another one? Religious liberty, freedom of conscience. All deadly words. Insinuated error under gentle words. Go on.
Once the truth had been compromised, they could, by means of slight changes or additions in phraseology, distort the confession of the faith that is necessary for our salvation, and lead the faithful by subtle errors to their eternal damnation. This manner of dissimulating and lying is vicious, regardless of the circumstances under which it is used. For very good reasons, it can never be tolerated in a synod of which the principal glory consists above all in teaching the truth with clarity and excluding all danger of error.
Please repeat that last sentence.
For very good reasons, it can never be tolerated in a synod of which the principal glory consists above all in teaching the truth with clarity and excluding all danger of error.
See, that's what Vatican II did not do. And Archbishop Lefebvre he prepared Vatican II for 2 years with a team of what they're called the Fathers that prepared Cetus Patrum Internationale. It was fathers and priests and theologians from all over the world. Archbishop Lefebvre was part of it. He headed it to prepare for Vatican II. And he said, we proposed a doctrinal section and then a pastoral section. Doctrine, so it's clear and there's no error, and the teaching is absolutely clear and in line with tradition. And then a pastoral section, which was, how do we apply this for the priests, to the parish, to souls, right? Very, very sound. Very sound. But they chucked the doctrine. That's why you can't say Vatican II is a real synod, a real council of the church, because they constantly said it's not a dogmatic council. It's not a dogmatic council. So then what is it? It's just a big bishops get together. That's what it was. That's all it was. It has no authority. And it doesn't fulfill at all any of the 4 conditions of infallibility. It doesn't. And twice Paul VI said, I don't use my infallible authority over this council. So there you go. So isn't this wonderful, though, for Catholics? Teaching the truth with what?
Clarity.
And excluding
all danger of error.
Yes, and Bishop Williamson knew this. Bishop Fidei knows this. So why are they try to dance around the new Mass in Vatican II and try to gently rebuke it and gently cover it. But clarity and excluding all danger of error. You see how language is very powerful, right? Dr. White has a few good talks on God rest his soul. But he has some very good talks on the power of language. Language can make wars. Language can bring peace. Language can save souls. Language can damn souls. Right? And language is the expressing of words that come from ideas. And who is the idea, the Word through whom all things were made? The Word of the Father. The expression of all truth is Christ himself. So our tongue and our ability to think is for truth. And to use it for lies and error is a terrible abuse. So all heresy and errors has to be condemned by the church. So liberals would scream at this encyclical, at this papal bull. They would scream, the Pope doesn't have the right to tell me what I can't believe. Sorry. The Pope is standing in for Christ. He has a duty to look over the sheep. And he has a duty to shoot the wolves. Yeah, but the wolves are nice. They mean well. All right, go shake hands with one. You'll be supper. You see, liberals are just stupid. They're just stupid. It's a pretend Disney world of niceness, and it's not true. But isn't that the modern world? You condemn any ideas, oh, you're being mean. And especially if you mention names, you're really being mean. Read on, Gabriel.
Moreover, if all this is sinful, it cannot be excused in the way that one sees it being done, under the erroneous pretext that the seemingly shocking affirmations in one place are further developed along orthodox lines in other places.
Traditional, that's what orthodox means, traditional in this sense.
And even in yet other places corrected, as if allowing for the possibility of either affirming or denying the statement, or of leaving it up the personal inclinations of the individual.
Leaving it up to, I guess. Leaving it up to, write that in, to the personal. Go on.
Such has always been the fraudulent and daring method used by innovators to establish error. It allows for both the possibility of promoting error and of excusing it.
There it is. That's why St. Athanasius was a tiger when it came to clearly defining who Christ is. The Arians wanted loose phrases that allowed for error, right? And notice here, yet in other places, the shocking affirmations in one place are further developed along traditional lines, so they can say traditional things, but then they weave in their poison. Now, who said this is how the modernists work?
St. Pius X.
Where?
In
Yes, he exposes the modernists. On one page he says it's all Catholic, fixed with tradition. But the next page is contradicted by their errors. You see? So what's great about this is that he's exposing not only the errors of the enemies, but the tactics. And that's why I say, Bishop Fidei, he should know this document, and he should know the tactics of the enemy. And for any bishop to come out saying 95% of Vatican II can be interpreted in the Catholic way, that's just ignorance of what the church is condemning the tactic of the enemy. Right? He has no business saying that. And when lay people hear that, laymen, oh, well, Bishop Fidei says 95% is acceptable. Well, it can't be that bad. Why are they making such a fuss over Vatican II? And the new Mass, it gives grace. The new Mass is legitimately promulgated. If you're an SSPX parishioner, you're basically Novus Ordo. And that's what's coming from the top. It is as if the innovators pretended that they always intended to present the alternative passages, especially to those of simple faith, who eventually come to know only some part of the conclusions of such discussions, which are published in the common language for everyone's use. Or again, as if the same faithful had the ability of, on examining such documents, to judge such matters for themselves, without getting confused and avoiding all risk of error. It is a most reprehensible technique for the insinuation of doctrinal errors, and one condemned long ago by our predecessor,
Saint Celestine.
who found it used in the writings of Nestorius, Bishop of Constantinople, in which he exposed in order to condemn it with the greatest possible niceness.
No severity.
Yes, condemn error with the greatest possible severity. Why? What was Nestorius teaching?
He was teaching that he taught that there were two persons in Christ. There was the person of the divine nature, and then the human person.
The divine person and the human person. Well, how come he's wrong? Because Christ said the Father is greater than I.
Because he was referring to his human nature. So there's only one person in Christ, but he has two natures, divine and human. And with this heresy, Nestorius was also attacking the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Yes, he was. Because he would conclude she's the mother of who, but not the mother of who.
The
Of
human,
human
person.
person. Yes, but not of the divine person. So she's not the mother of God.
Right. So you see what a subtle attack this was, right? And that's why the Virgin Mary is the bulwark of the Catholic faith. Anybody who attacks her attacks the Catholic faith. Anyone who defends her defends the Catholic faith. So Saint Celestine said he's the one that condemned their technique for the insinuation of doctrinal errors in their phrases, right? So it's not just the errors, but the technique, the method that they produce and spread their errors is condemned. Once these texts were examined carefully, the impostor was exposed and confounded, for he expressed himself in a plethora of words, that means many words, mixing true things with others that were obscure, mixing at times one with the other in such a way that he was also able to confess those things which were denied, while at the same time possessing a basis for denying those very sentences which he confessed. In order to expose such snares, something which becomes necessary with a certain frequency in every century, no other method is required than the following. Whenever it becomes necessary to expose statements that disguise some suspected error or danger under the veil of ambiguity, one must denounce the perverse meaning under which the error opposed to Catholic truth is camouflaged. In other words, anybody? Put it in simple language for a 7-year-old. What's the Pope saying?
That ambiguity must be condemned.
A 7-year-old would say, what's ambiguity? Is that a name of a burger? Is that a monster?
So if there's a phrase that's ambiguous, if it can be taken in an evil way, let's say, or a good way, you have to condemn the evil way in which that phrase can be taken. Is that what he means, the Pope?
Not only condemn the erroneous interpretation,
But the phrase itself.
Statement itself.
Yeah,
the
statement.
ambiguous, double-tongued phrase itself has to be also condemned. And that's why this statement here condemns what?
Vatican II.
II.
Absolutely. Condemns Vatican II. This alone right here. Pius VI, speaking as Pope. That would be another good question. Is he invoking infallible authority? Well, I guess you could argue no, because it's just he's dealing with pistoia. But you can say this is certainly part of the ordinary magisterium, and therefore infallible, and the official teaching of the Church, which condemns Vatican II. So Vatican II, there's no hope for it. And Bishop Fidei and all these liberal Catholics, they want to rescue Vatican II. They want to rescue what they can of it, and it just can't be rescued.
You could say maybe that he's saying just the fact that the statement can be interpreted in a bad way means it's condemnable.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Because this whole, what he's saying, it basically goes back to what Christ said. He says, let your yes mean your yes and your no mean your no.
Yeah. CC no. No wonder the Angelus magazine stopped publishing CC no. That was a series of articles out of a group of nuns in Italy who were publishing these hard-hitting anti-liberal, anti-modernist articles and exposing the modernists in Rome at Vatican II. And for some reason, in the name of let's be charitable and nice and get along and stop being militant, they stopped publishing them in 2012. No surprise, from the Angelus magazine. Adjutorium nostrum in omni Domini.